Public safety meeting to order. Do a roll call? We just motion to adopt the, well, normally, what's standard to say the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would want to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll support.
Support. Those in favor, or so there's nothing else to add to
Further
the
discussion?
Okay, so we'll, all those in favor to adopt the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. I don't see Janelle here. Do you know if you heard anything from her?
I have not, and we did not receive.
So would she be off today because of
Oh, you're right.
holiday?
It's Juneteenth. Yes, she would not be.
All right, we'll move on then. So we never got okay. See, I told you it was gonna go
I
fast.
guess you're right.
Kim, I guess we'll hear from you.
Okay. Good afternoon. So I submitted a request to your office last week. We had conversation with our construction crew and the project manager for the new tower. We were informed that disassembling and removing the legacy tower was not included in the contract, that we would be responsible for that on our own. So we thought we would at least get the ball rolling, request to do some sealed bids for that. But we had further discussion with them on Friday, and their recommendation at this time is to leave the tower where it is, at least temporarily. I know there was talk previously, before I was in this position, about leasing out space and things like that on the new tower. It's been brought to our attention that would be quite costly. And so they said we may want to hold on to that tower, at least for the time being, to make sure we don't have an opportunity to make some revenue off of it.
It'd be costly to have us lease out that space?
It would be almost cost prohibitive for anybody to get their equipment onto the tower,
The new
To the new tower.
on the new tower.
Oh,
So they're recommending to hold on to the legacy tower temporarily for however long we deem appropriate at another time. Hold on to it in case there is an opportunity for revenue. We can always tear it down. We can't put it back up.
I was just going to mention that, we could leave it there until the building comes down.
Yeah, I have to check. I haven't reviewed the language yet from the special use permit to see if there was anything in there discussing the future of the existing tower.
I don't
I
recall.
haven't had a chance yet to review that. Obviously, that would be a game changer, but for now, I am just going to request that we table the item.
Okay. That's easy enough.
Easy enough. Yeah, she's just pulling her request for approval, so.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Is there any, let me ask you, is there any other things that you could update us on? Sorry, Eric.
Oh, you're fine.
Just with 911, because we don't get to talk to you that often.
No, we don't.
This is an opportunity.
Yes, so we have a new employee started training last week. And we have another starting in August.
So you'll be up to
No,
11? You'll be up to 11?
We will be up to 10. We're losing one, but we already have one to replace the one we're losing.
Okay.
We'll be starting the following day, which is really fantastic. 911 centers around the state and around the country are struggling with recruitment. And we will be fully staffed, including the new position we added this year. We just got back. We went about a month ago. We went to the Great Lakes Homeland Security Conference in Grand Rapids. That is always, you come home refreshed and fired up and ready to hit the ground running again. our Assistant Director Al and I, and we were able to take 2 dispatchers with us. Region 7 Homeland Security reimburses us. This year they allowed us 4. So that's a really nice opportunity to be able to take some of our employees to have that experience, and Homeland Security reimburses us. So that's really nice.
Kim, any feedback on now that we are operating off the new tower from law enforcement, any public safety, any feedback from them?
It's not operational yet.
It's not, so we're still using, okay.
It's not operational yet. Just before we left to walk over, they were gonna do some testing tomorrow. They've had to cancel that. They're still saying the middle of August, but honestly, I hope she's not listening. I don't expect it's gonna happen. We were supposed to do coverage testing in June. And they had to push that back, and it's not even rescheduled yet.
Who's they? Not MPS.
Yeah, so, did you work with Stacy Reynolds from Motorola? I know she was involved in the console project.
Okay.
She's our project manager, and she and Bob Olson from MTSCS are driving the ship at this point. And there were some problems with the testing when they came on site, so they're working to resolve that. So we're just letting them do their stuff on their end. There's nothing we can do to push it along.
Right.
Just wait for everything to work. So the testing for tomorrow is canceled. So we're totally at the mercy at this point. But we're excited for it to finally get up and running, and
It's everything it promises to be. It'll be a huge impact.
yes, it will be, and that kind of
Yeah.
keeps everybody pushing along because it had some big problems that it's going to solve for us.
And I just want to share with you just a moment. So it's first Saturday of the month when they do the siren test. There was a big baseball tournament for little kids out at the Alpena Township. When that siren went off at 1 o'clock, it scared the bejesus out of about 400 people. I never saw so many kids on the baseball.
Because does that come from the new tower?
No, it's the alert system. With all the.
We try to put notices out on social media, but of course not everybody sees those either.
Especially because there's so many people from out of town and they're thinking, oh my God, a tornado. And a lot of us are going, no, it's only a test. It's only a test. But it did get people's attention. I will just say that.
Fantastic.
But that's for the township, the township baseball fields are adjacent to the Alpena Township
Right.
tower. But yeah, it was.
The only other thing I can think of to update you on is we were notified earlier this spring that we were drawn in a random hat, literally, for an audit this year with the state 911 office. We have completed that, and we have a virtual meeting with the state on July 10th, and then they will be doing an on-site visit on the 17th. They audited 3 years plus so far this year of our finances. They audited our training funds that we get from them back through 19. And then they're coming on site and they're going to review our policies and procedures and our security measures, those kind of things. So we're looking forward to wrapping that up. It's been a lot of work.
Sure, I'm sure it has.
Okay. All right.
Commissioner Francisco, did I send you the link for that? If I didn't, I will.
Let me look at it when I get home. And if I do not have a link, I'll email you back.
If any of the other committee members would like to be in on either the virtual meeting or the in-person meeting, just let me know and I can.
Audits are awesome. Right?
What's that?
Audits are awesome.
It was just a lot of work because a lot of the records they wanted preceded me. So the clerk's office and the commissioner's office, those girls have done some heavy lifting for us to get everything they wanted. But with some good assistance from them, we provided every last receipt they were looking for. So,
Outstanding.
yeah. Any questions for me?
Other than audits are a huge learning event, that's for sure. You'll learn a lot.
I'm looking forward to it. And I am.
Trying to find that silver lining.
This again for a long time.
Trying to find that silver lining.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Chair, I don't know if you want to take the sheriff's memo first, or if you want to review survey results and program expenses first.
Why don't you do that one first?
And I should have thought through that when we were putting through the agenda. I think reviewing the survey results and the program expenses actually kind of lead into the sheriff's memo.
Just trying to find where I put it. There it is. What I did was I downloaded, I don't know, I'm not a Survey Monkey guru, so I cut and pasted different things. So I don't know if do you guys both have a copy of that?
I just forwarded it, and I can actually have Kim get on the link and put it up on the screen too.
Okay.
I did look at it before, yeah. Survey results, that is. Yep, I did see it.
Okay.
Yep, it's up. And then we can, if you guys so choose, one easy way to share these results once we've discussed them here today is that I can actually post a link to these survey results so that people can go look through the surveys themselves and look at the information there that's provided. So just very kind of a big picture, and then if you have any questions, there were 232 responses. I went through the responses individually. We did have a few duplicates, no repeat IP addresses. There were a handful of people who skipped either the email contact information or did not enter complete addresses. At this point in time, I have left those in the survey results, but we could pull them if we wanted to. They're easy to identify which ones those are, but it was less than 5% of the survey responses. So I don't think it impacts the validity of the survey to have those responses in there right now. I will say it was a very balanced response. Based on, what came in. The vast majority of the responses obviously came in the first probably 10 days of the survey, but they did trickle through all the way to the end. One of the things that I think is interesting is that, if you look at, for instance, do you believe that the current Alpena County Animal Control Shelter meets demand? So if you open up that first question there, Kim, if you click on the little pop out in the corner there. Do you believe that the current Alpena Animal Control location best meets the needs? You can see that, between the yeses and the nos, those are about equal. The maybes are the biggest portion of those. And obviously you can read those either way, but in my mind, reading a maybe says that there could be improvements. And I think really that kind of goes all the way through this survey that, most of the people seem to feel like the current animal control does a good job, but, there's a little room for improvement in terms of the facility. And we know that, right? The current facility was not originally designed for the type of use that it is being put to right now. And being co-located on the fairgrounds, we certainly have heard from folks who are camping there. We have heard folks who also rent the space there, either whether that's the Merchants Building or other space, that it's not always a easy cohabitation with the dogs that are there. And certainly from the animal control perspective, having dogs or other animals that either have special needs or are trying to recover or who have health issues, being around all of the activity at the fairgrounds is not always the best thing for those dogs. Or animals. One of the things that I did think was interesting and will be worth looking at as we move forward in this discussion in regards to the, oops, I lost my, you're still looking at it. I gotta go back in. Is the question around what are the most important services that the Alpena County Animal Control Program deals with right now? And then looking prospectively, right? What are the things that we think we should be working on or could be changing? So if you look at that, what is the most important service that the Animal Control Program provides? Investigating animal abuse and neglect is definitely one of the big ones. And that really is a function of the law enforcement side, not really of the animal control shelter side. That's really the ACO, which at this point in time is under the Sheriff's Department. The things like picking up the dogs, that's a little bit more on the shelter side, but even so, the shelter operations is really what happens when the animals are brought to us and put into our care. not so much on the enforcement side and the control side. So I thought that was interesting to kind of look at that and think about that as we go forward with planning for the program. And then in terms of the next to last question, which is if we were to amend the current animal control ordinance, far and away, obviously the biggest response there is dealing with the cats. And we have heard that from lots of different input, both in terms of this survey, but also in terms of community input, calls to the commissioner's office. I'm sure you deal with that. And I know in the sheriff's office, they deal with it a lot. Which is right now our animal control ordinance only deals with dogs. Dogs are what we are required to handle as part of state statute. We could include cats in our ordinance if the county so chose. So that is something that we could look at moving forward. And then obviously you guys can get to all of the comments that were left. Again, it was a real mix. Obviously, a lot of people very supportive of our current program, but people also offering things that we could do to change or suggestions about how we can handle things a little bit differently. So it was honestly, at the end of the day, I felt like a very balanced response in the survey. Are there any questions?
No, I came to the same conclusion after the survey was completed. When I went through it, I thought it was balanced as well. The only thing that, as you pointed out, that really came out was the taking care of dangerous animals, et cetera, and investigative part. That was the only one that was overwhelmingly supported, if you will. Everything else, they were balanced responses of the 232.
Yeah, one of the things that my comment would be on this was some of these, how do you read this? Because like you said, there's either strong for or strong against, or like somewhere right in the middle. And then, how does that work into, I guess moving forward, what we do with that?
Right. Well, and as you guys know, right, this is a snapshot. It's a snapshot of people at the time that they answer the survey. It's a snapshot in the time that we took the survey. And at the end of the day, yes, 232 is a nice response level, but we have 29,000 people who live in this county. So 232 is at the end of the day a very, very small percentage of our overall population. And so using it as kind of a little window into what folks are thinking about in terms of our animal control program. But it was very, very helpful and very useful to do. We could think about, diving into a couple of these things a little bit deeper if we wanted to as we move forward. One of the things that I wanted to share with you, and it was in the packet of information that I sent out earlier today. So the last page. So as you guys know, we've really been delving into how we come up with the costs for this program, what it costs the general fund to run this program. The last document that's in there is the very first stab that was taken at putting together a budget. And that's the one that has the $100,000 deficit. And you can see that, there are things that are missing from this that we really refined as I learned more about the program and about where various and sundry both revenues and expenses live as part of this program. One of the biggest things that you see is missing on that particular document is the license revenue. So that brings in, last year brought in about 35,000. We've budgeted 30,000 this year. That's not listed here because, as we've said before, that revenue doesn't live in that general fund department, which is Department 430. That revenue right now lives in the treasurer's office. And so when we look at our budget spreadsheets right now, that revenue offsets expenses in the treasurer's office. Now, that being said, right, it's all general fund. Right. It all gets dumped into one big pot, and that's where all the revenue and all the expenses come out of. But historically, we haven't tracked that revenue against the expenses of this particular program, which is why it didn't show up in those first budgets that we were looking at. So the front page of that handout is the 5-year look back. And as noted previously, what we were missing from this when we looked at it before were some of the utility costs. So I was able to go back and add in the natural gas and the water bills. we're not able to put in the electric because we don't have that split out. So we can make some estimates. If we were to use some examples of the other properties that are at the fairgrounds, you could probably comfortably put in $150 to $200 a month for electricity. But I didn't want to put a number in there since we didn't have that. The one that kind of surprised me a little bit, I will say, is the natural gas. That one has gone up pretty significantly. And you'll see in the year-to-date column, which is the green column, we're actually trending very high this year. So we're up from historically somewhere around $800 to $5,300. That's because we allocated the additional expense for having the Merchants Building open earlier this year to handle an overflow matter with some hoarding to the animal control program, since those were animal control expenses. So that is trending very high at the moment. But as you can see for 2023, if you take into account the additional revenue and expenses, we're looking at a budgeted deficit for that program somewhere around $78,000, $79,000. What that puts into that, of course, is the deputy's salary, administrative support. I put in a plug number for shelter attendants, workers' comp, sick and accident, animal control supplies, all of those kinds of things. Printing, which is an expense that historically has been carried through the treasurer's office, but that is the printing for the licenses that come in. Obviously the utility costs. So again, this is all general fund money. So it just lives in the general fund. These are dollars that come out. And that's why I felt comfortable putting, if I'm going to put the dog license sales revenue in here, putting things like the deputy's salary in here, because that is also a general fund department, the deputies, the sheriff's office. So that is that first document. And as kind of I noted in our previous meeting, the budgeted deficit is not, it is higher than in years previous, but not nearly as much higher as I had originally thought. So when I did that original budget with that $100,000 deficit, and I looked back historically, because we had very, very few expenses tracking through. So if you look back at 2017, we're showing a budgeted deficit or an actual deficit of $36,000. But the only expenses that really came through that were a part-time ACO and some vehicle maintenance are the only expenses that showed up. The difference there is revenue. There was not all of the donations revenue that came through. So, you can see last year in 2022, there was $54,000 worth of donations revenue. In 2021, there was $31,000 worth of donations revenue. So they have been bringing in a lot of revenue, and that is cash and cash equivalents. Mm-hmm. When I had a discussion with the sheriff's office in terms of the donations, one of the things that we will need to work on going forward is that currently when donations are brought in, there is no inventory mechanism for fungible for, what's the word? I've lost my words. Consumables. That's the word I was looking for things like cat food and dog food and cat litter, the kinds of things that they quickly move through. There's no inventory tracking mechanism for bringing that stuff in, just as there is no tracking mechanism for using that stuff. So we really have no good way to come up with kind of like an average cost of care for an animal such that we could project out, okay, if for some reason donations dried up and we had to rely entirely on the general funds to operate this department, we don't have any kind of a good baseline for saying, okay, it's $20 a day to look after a dog. And that's what it costs, and that's what we need to budget going forward. Obviously, some of the animals come in with higher care needs, and so we have vet bills and things like that. They do get a lot of good donations in that cover a lot of those expenses, and often they are covering expenses for a particular animal. But that was one of the tough things in putting together some projections, was that we don't have that kind of data that we can use to put it together. I made some adjustments on the scenarios that you had seen previously. And again, those are just kind of general planning documents, thinking about, okay, so if we looked at a program that kind of was shaped like this, here's what it might look like, here's what another one might look like. So the three that I had kind of just thrown together were, scenario one is a full-time shelter manager with full-service shelter and program support. So that's like going whole hog into it, having a full-time shelter manager, full-service shelter, we're doing it all. The second scenario was a full-time shelter manager with a service agreement. So the idea is that the full-time shelter manager would be bringing animals in and then moving them on out into service agreements with other places. But obviously there would always be a time when we would have to have them in our care. And then scenario three was if we did a civilian ACO and a shelter director, and was more of a triage model for housing animals. So certain types of animals we would keep, certain types of animals we would move on through. Those are one of a gazillion different ways that you could think about this. You could mix and match, you could throw those all out and start over together. Those were just some ideas, and starting to put some numbers on them. A couple of things to note about those, and then I'll quit talking so that you guys can digest and react, is that I did modify, obviously, the amount of donations that would come in, because under those different scenarios, you are looking at very different models of how we would be operating. And I think you would be expecting very, very different, something very different in terms of donations if you ran those in different ways. So the last thing I just wanted to say is that as we have learned more about the program and both the, the things that are happening that are going really, really well and some areas where we could see some improvement, we've learned that really somewhere between 40 and 60% of the dogs that are taken in are actually dropped off by City of Alpena Police, which was a little bit surprising because they have a contract for care. That being said, I know that it has been a challenge because there has been this question of where do dogs go? And they have understood that all dogs must come to the county as opposed to being able to go to Huron Humane Society, which is where they currently have a service contract for Huron Humane Society to care for animals that are taken in through the city. So I would think that would be someplace that we would definitely need to have further conversation. If we are taking most or all the animals from the city, but there is a service, like I think that would be something we would need to do a little research in and talking about. So.
Because we don't get any funding from the city right now, correct?
Not.
Well, the city provides funding to the Humane Society for whatever.
I mean, I've looked at their service contract, but yeah, it's just whatever animals they drop off here in Humane Society looks after for.
But if they're not dropping them off,
Because we're coming to the county.
Dogs. I want to be clear, dogs. Is my understanding. But again, I have not had,
they actually pick up cats and drop them off there?
I believe so. I believe so.
And what, Mary Catherine, was the number of dogs you said that were provided to the county from the city?
40%?
40%, I thought you said?
Somewhere between 40 and 60%. Now, this is anecdotal.
Okay.
Because one of the things that, as we have, attempted to gather data, is that the shelter management software that we currently pay for and should be in use at the shelter, I would say has inconsistent use at best. Some of the data is really good. There is data that is in there, but some of it is not up to date. So we can't go in and pull a report currently that shows exactly where animals are coming from and what their disposition is.
Well, and I think that goes back to something that we were talking about before with the policies. And I know, make a point to, because Jesse did ask that we had the policies, and I know we saw your letter, but the policies that we had asked for that we've been told has made the animal control shelter top-notch do not exist. And I think this goes back to your point as well, that how can we get good information when the information isn't being properly tracked. So I don't know if that's like a segue into them.
I think a little bit, yes, a segue into,
So if I may ask, Mary Catherine, do you know, you said you looked at the service agreement between the city and the Huron Humane Society. Do you know what the contribution from the city is to them?
20,000.
25,000.
25,000? Okay.
25?
Thank you. Okay.
It was one of the models that I looked at when there was very early discussion about what are some different ways in which we could handle things. I think that service agreement leaves a lot of open ends on it, but yes, that is the agreement that they have.
Okay, thanks.
So I apologize if my mind wanders. I got a lot of stuff that I want to talk about. I'll probably skip around. But last month, Michelle Reed, myself, Cash Kroll, and Audra Cole went to a MGuard training over in Gaylord. And to be honest with you, I wish I would have attended it a lot earlier. It was a very eye-opening experience, learned a lot. But the biggest things that I've learned, there's 83 counties in Michigan, and all 83 counties do things differently. There's no one model that we can copy from, or we can say, hey, let's look at this county and just duplicate it, because everybody's different. Everybody's got different funding sources. It just won't work. So we have to build a program that works here in Alpena County. And I know there's been a lot of controversy over things. I just want to set the record straight that from the beginning, I've always thought that our office should be the enforcement piece of animal control. There's nothing like a deputy sheriff or a certified officer actually going and enforcing all the criminal activity. It just doesn't make sense to have a civilian doing that enforcement piece. Years ago, when Denny Partlow did our enforcement, weekly, he would come over to our office and get help from a deputy. So it wasn't very effective because we were doing the work anyways, a lot of that. And then even when Huron Humane Society took over that, our, misdemeanors and felonies, our office still had to assist them in doing the investigation. So having a deputy at our office makes the most sense. It's the most expensive, but it is the most effective way to investigate and seek prosecution. And I think the prosecutor's office would probably support that, saying that within recent years, we've had the best animal abuse cases, or the most come up of recent times. So when it comes down to building a program or what's right for us, at this training, they talked about capacity of care, and I know I mentioned it in my memo to you, but capacity of care means not only what do we need on a daily basis, but what we need in case we have the next hoarding case or the next large seizure that comes through the door. Everybody in this room knows that our current shelter is not adequate. It doesn't have an intake room. It doesn't have a quarantine room. It just is not gonna be the right facility. But after going through the training, I don't think that, contracting with a nonprofit here in Humane Society, Second Chance, I don't think they're probably the most appropriate to contract with either. I don't think they have the capacity of care that Alpena County is going to need. Now, they did talk about building relationships. I think that absolutely has to happen. And when they start building relationships, meaning they help us out when we have, stray holds come in and we funnel our dogs. Basically, we take the dog for the least amount of time. As soon as the stray hold's done, we transfer ownership over to them. I don't know what the answer is, but those relationships is going to be beneficial to our program. When I look at the budget, Michelle Reed has done a very good job over the years keeping costs down, with donations and everything else that she's got going over there. So I do, looking back, I think she did a very good job with that. And I guess, I'm kind of rambling on and trying to search where I'm going next. The thing that we have to figure out is what are we going to do here for our needs? And I think we need to bring everybody to the table and just come up with a solution there. I can talk about vet a record and all that other stuff that I've learned, but I don't really think that, I don't want to bore you. I guess the biggest thing is, we do have a failure at our shelter. Mary Catherine, talked about that a little bit. We don't have any policies and procedures. They talked about everything that happens in the shelter. There needs to be a policy written for it and it has to be followed to a T. We don't have any of that. That stuff needs to be fixed and needs to be fixed quick. My suggestion is instead of inventing the wheel, we don't have the statistics. We should be able to go into a program and pull any stat we want. If we want to know how many dogs we had last month, male or female, we should be able to type that in the computer and boom, here it is. Because we're asking you guys to make a decision, or you guys are making a decision for the community without any good concrete facts, good concrete stats. I think, to be perfectly blunt, I think what I'm asking you guys is to do is maybe we just fix the shelter as it is. We get an advisory board to help write these policies. We get the policy set. We can review this down the road, but let's get these concrete numbers before we go any further and figure out what we're gonna do. I think there's a lot of good things that happen over there. I don't think everything's broke. I think the biggest, honest with you, the biggest thing is just the policies and procedures. With that, those policies should mirror our township or our county ordinance. We can tweak those a little bit and get the shelter and animal control running the way it's intended to be. The best service for the animals, the best service for the community at the best cost we can provide. And I think if we tweak those things and get everybody on the same page, it's going to be a win-win for everybody. So I guess what I'm asking you is to step back from this for right now. Rethink things through. Maybe we put some action in place to get these policies written. Like Mary Catherine said, the budget, get everything over into one budget so we know exactly how much it costs down the road. And then use that good concrete data to make decisions down the road and not do a knee-jerk decision right now.
Well, I think as far as the budget, I mean, we don't really, as you stated, it's really coming out of one pot. It doesn't matter whether it's over here or over here, you still have the numbers. So we have the numbers regardless whether it's in the county treasurer's office, because with the revenue comes an expenditure. So there is that. I think the bigger problem, and kind of what we're hearing here is, we've been doing this for quite some time and we don't really have good statistics to be able to make an informed decision. If we're not tracking how many animals are coming in on a monthly basis and the cost of maintaining those animals, how do we make an informed decision? And you kind of touched on one of the things that I think, probably needs to happen is Jesse and I went down over last month and we went to both the Humane Society and we went to Animal Control. I think we had 12 dogs in cages in that building, which at that point is pretty much maxed out. It was so bad that it was hard to even have a discussion in there. But the thing that kind of bothered me even more so was the fact that we had 3 dogs that have been there almost a year. And again, I guess, and I don't know how to fix that, but if we're, I guess, housing dogs for up to a year, one, I don't think it's right for the dogs, because to me, that's just abusive. And I get that they're part of a case, but there's got to be a better way, because to me, that's, dogs don't live forever. And that's a huge part of its life for 1 year sitting in a shelter. And then the other piece to that is, and you kind of touch on it, actually the number from the city is 22,500 on theirs. But to say, and again, I'm not saying that we're trying to do this for the money, we shouldn't be, but there's got to be a better way with that, because when we were in the shelter, there was, like I said, 12 dogs there. There was no dogs over at Humane Society. And again, I've talked to now both Humane Society and Second Chance. And again, and I've said this from the very beginning, it'd be a wonderful place if we could have all three of them somehow work together. But, you know, I can't fix that. But there has to be that working relationship because, you know, we can't build the kingdom over here, the kingdom over there, and the kingdom out there. Somehow that has to work together. And if we're not working together, then we have a problem. And this is where we are. So we're spending a ton of money. Again, I know Second Chance isn't up and running, and I don't really know. I think their budget, I don't know. Do you remember what their budget is? Is it close to 300,000?
For the Humane Society, I don't know what their annual.
I know they're spending a lot of money, but either way, and I every time we've met with Michelle, I've said the same thing. Wouldn't it be a wonderful place if all three shelters could somehow figure out how to work through this? And I know the reality is that all three of them aren't just going to collaborate together, but there needs to be a working relationship between all three of them because like I said, to me, when I go into the animal control shelter and you've got 12 dogs and they're just, and again, I don't believe that shelter is equipped or meant to house the dogs that were, or just even animals, because there was cats in there as well. So I think I agree with you. I think that we need to work towards developing those policies. We need to work to better utilize that software program because we're talking, we can't talk about solid statistics because we don't have them. You know, even with those donations, if we're tracking the donations, granted, you know, you don't have to know this bag of dog food that was donated by someone costs $22.95, but you have a rough idea of how much it costs and you can track that. We're using 10 bags a month of whatever. We need better statistics and somehow a collaboration of all that stuff between the three shelters, between better use of the software, developing those relationships. I think it's key, and developing the policies, which we do not have. So.
And I think we could live within the shelter that we're at right now until we get this under control and on the right path. And then, you know, maybe down the road, to me, the best place for the shelter would be in a garage, or not a garage, a facility next to the sheriff's office where we can use inmates to come out and help with some of the tasks. It's good therapy for inmates. Really, if that's where it's going to stay, part of the sheriff's office, it should be next to our facility and not at the fairgrounds. But that could be a goal out in the future after we get everything under control, after we get the stats, we can get the direction that everything's going to head. But we got to get those policies fixed and, like I said, get the concrete evidence on what's going on.
Well, in one piece that I know, because I talked to Brenda today. So one of the things is, I don't know who knows, but Bert, myself, and Brenda, Bill had asked us to be part of that subcommittee or whatever and I think that's where we should be part of that to help. And again, I know Brenda and I have been part of that animal control subcommittee, whatever you want to call it, on and off for quite a while. But I think that's where we could start with is to get those policies developed. And
We came back
you.
in Cash, Michelle and Kat and I all sat down. We took the whiteboard and we wrote down everything that needed a policy to be written that we thought. I mean, there's probably more. We took the most important, which is intake. It took us probably a couple hours to get a rough draft of intake, and they provided sample policies that I think I forwarded you, Commissioner. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can take other policies and make them fit for us. But it's going to be time consuming. And then like the 911 board, once those policies get written and approved, then it goes to the 911 board to get approved. I think you guys need to have buy-in and get approved some of these these policies because the shelter's not a function of the sheriff. It's a function of the commissioner. I think you guys need to approve these. You need to show us the direction or approve the direction, but it needs to be a group buy-in on everybody involved. Sheriff's office, animal control, the commissioners, and just one big team. Let's get this fixed. I'm tired of talking about it.
I think we have to do that, Sheriff, because we're talking about, and again, it depends on what numbers we look at. There's when Mary Catherine says the money comes out of the general fund and there are revenues against that, I understand that. But we're talking about anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 that we could be taking from the taxpayers when they pay their taxes and the revenue comes to the county that we're spending on the shelter. I'm not talking animal control, the enforcement piece. I get that. That's mandated. But we could be spending that much on there. A few people in the community are very vocal about it and supporting it. And I understand that. But there's a large silent majority out there that may not want their tax dollars of $30,000, $50,000 or $100,000 going towards a control shelter when we do have two other shelters that could possibly do that. So if we're going to do this and we're going to look at, we all have said, yeah, we should have a control shelter. That's fine. Let's do that. What's it going to cost to build an adequate one? And is the community, the people, the voters of this county, are they going to be willing to pay that for that? That's what we need to find out,
Absolutely.
in my opinion.
And one other thing I just want to touch on, the first thing they said when we went into that training, and I think I've told several of you, the days of the old box shelter are gone. Meaning the pole barn or the big storage place with a bunch of kennels thrown in there and you just lock the dogs up. The state will tell you that's not happening anymore. So it's going to cost money. And it's our responsibility to treat the animals the way that the state is mandating us to treat them. We need to have that shelter. We need to have the quarantine room. We need to have the intake rooms. Ours will not suffice, but I think it will suffice until we can get the ship righted and get on the right path.
I got another note, and this is probably, I don't know, Michelle or you, but going back to my discussion about the 3 dogs that are out there, and they're almost at a year or whatever when I went there last month. But how long does or should the case take? I mean, like I said, to me, I know we have a lot of people that are supportive of the dogs and the animals of this community, but I wouldn't want my son's dog locked up for a year in a shelter like that. That's just, to me, that's not right.
Without looking at each case and actually reading what happened, I can't give you a definite answer, but there are different things that could prolong a case. Maybe the deputy didn't get the report done in a timely manner and if it took them 4 or 6 weeks to get it, that prolongs it. Sometimes cases get hung up in the judicial process, and sometimes it takes a year to be adjudicated. So I can't give you an exact answer unless I looked at the specific case and look at all that. But no, I don't think anybody would want to have a dog for a year, and that's not what dogs are for. They're not supposed to be crated up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Well, and I know that when you say crated up, I know they're not sitting in those kennels for 24 hours. But just having, again, like I said, I would not want my son's dog locked up in that kennel and then twice a day or whatever, go run around it's just, to me, it's wrong.
And luckily we have volunteers that come and do that work and let them out. And, so I do appreciate that. It's just not the ideal situation though.
Yeah.
I would like to see this be a zero-sum game if possible, but I don't think it's going to be. When I say expenses and revenues, are going to be a zero. The only way it would be a zero-sum game is if we knew what that delta was and the delta for cost. And if the community would vote to provide them millage dollars to be able to, so we have a zero-sum game. That would be the ideal. That would be ideal. If not, we as commissioners need to understand what is going to be an acceptable amount of money to be provided from the general fund towards shelter operations. And that's a discussion that we have to have. And, again, I think having this ad hoc committee, I think is a way to be able to do that. And then we bring it to the full board.
Okay. And I think, like we talk about how many animals are in there and talk about the stray hold and how we should funnel them out. That's a way that the shelter's actually been getting money through adoptions, is because they charge for the adoptions and that money gets rolled back into the program. So there's a couple different philosophies there, but all that needs to be examined in the best policy and procedure, needs to be put in place in practice. And we need to figure all that out.
And I do just want to be clear, there is documentation, right? I mean, the shelter is required to submit reports annually to MDR. But the way I understand it is that a lot of the initial information is taken in by hand. And then there's no way to review those hand records, right? Until they're entered into the shelter management program. And it's the shelter management program that would allow us to pull certain types of statistics, and monitor animals. And I believe that shelter management software, actually, you can put in medications, you can put in care, all of those kinds of things that would allow just kind of general administrative oversight of the program. So it's not that there's no documentation, right? It's just, it's not getting into the program in the way that would allow a review of that documentation.
Does that track like expenses towards the animals?
I believe it can, but I am not incredibly familiar with that software, and that's certainly something the ad hoc committee could look into. In talking to Officer Reed, it sounds like that program does have a lot of capacity in it that we are not necessarily utilizing, but I'm not super familiar with the program.
Do you have questions about Pet Point? Because Michelle could answer them.
Does it allow tracking of medications and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we can actually use that program for everything.
Yeah.
It's just, what do we have time for 3 part-time employees to do and do the rest of their work as well? And that just, the time allotted just doesn't allow for that because we're so busy.
I hear that.
I just wanted to touch on capacity for care since the sheriff brought it up, and then it seems to be a concern of Commissioner Kozlowski. So Commissioner, capacity for care is how an animal, do you have the proper environment for an animal to stay in and either stay the same or get better? An animal should get better in your care. The animals that we bring into our shelter have been neglected and abused to the point where when they're in our shelter, that's the best life that those animals know to date. So have we ever had an animal backslide? I think I can think of 2 over the last 6.5 years. And that's because they became too attached to staff and became overly protective of staff. As far as anything else, those animals only improve in our care and become better and more adoptable. Even the ones that have been there for close to a year. And that's a court thing. It's just taking forever to get those cases through court. We've been to court a few times and there's stages of cases. And in fact, I just talked to the assistant prosecutor on the way out to see where we were at with a couple of those cases, and hopefully they'll be done soon. But that's live evidence, and we make sure that, they're doing well in our care. One of those animals came in as a puppy, a young puppy, and had gone to a trainer for 8 months of the time that it's been there. I think he's been in training for at least 8 months, and has just come back to us within the last few weeks because the trainer's mother is having some health issues and she needs to deal with that for right now. But yeah, no, our animals get the best care possible. Again, capacity for care, when we're taking care of them, those animals are getting fully vaccinated while in our care. They do not leave the shelter until they're fully vaccinated, including boosters. They get their rabies shot. They get microchipped. They are spayed and neutered if they're age appropriate before they leave our shelter. If they are not age appropriate for spay and neuter, they don't get adopted. They go into what we call a foster to adopt. That means they're the responsibility of the person that is going to eventually adopt this animal, but they're not 100% theirs until they're spayed and neutered. We make that appointment. We make sure they show up to that appointment. Once the animal's spayed and neutered, then we do the adoption paperwork. I know for a fact the other 2 shelters do not make sure or follow through that those animals are being spayed and neutered. With cats, That is so important. That's why we have a cat problem. Nobody
No,
follows up on
just
that.
wanted to touch on that. I was going to touch on that. I've been following what's going on at Second Chance, and I've talked to Leanne, and I know she's been working to get a surgical suite over there to do that spay and neuter. And I don't know if it's dogs yet, but I know they were doing cats. And that's another huge problem that we haven't even really touched on is the whole,
We've done low-cost spay neuter on cats. We've done hundreds.
what I was going to say was, and again, I don't know how often you're doing it and who you're doing it with, but I know they're trying to push at least once a month and maybe even more. But, and again, I don't know, to me with these cats and again, I don't know what the capacity is or the capabilities are there, whether to do the dogs. But that's where I go back to, a collaboration with the other, because if they're getting something set up, then we don't need you to work on getting something set up. And that's something that we could work to, down the line, if they're doing that once a month or whatever they're doing it, that'd be a perfect opportunity to get those.
And we have taken some of our cats to their low-cost spay neuter clinic. We partner with them. They got the space, we got the equipment. There were talks of that going on, long before all of this went down. As far as just turning animals over as soon as they become adoptable to a protection shelter, we want to make darn sure we spent our time on rescuing these animals from a neglect and abuse situation. We want to make darn sure they're not going right back to those situations. We have a very strict application process to match those animals with a best match. Just not somebody who comes in and fills out an application and throws down adoption fees. That's not how it works. That's not best practice.
And I'm not going to speak for both of them, but I do not, again, just from my conversations with Second Chance, I do not believe that they're just trying to push animals out the door. I absolutely do not believe that. And again, we have to have good partners. And again, whether it's, Humane Society and whether, and I know because I've been part of this since 2017, there's a lot of dynamics here with personalities and stuff like that. And I think we need, again, it goes back to the animals. And if we truly care about the animals, and again, I can't speak on behalf of Humane Society, but I feel confident that when Second Chance gets up and running, they're not just going to be pushing animals out the door. Just from the conversations that I've had, especially if they're working to get these low-cost spay and neuters, they're looking out for the best interest of the animals. And that's where, and again, I go back to, if that's why we're here, then we need to figure out a solution to work together to move forward. We can't just say, they don't do this and they don't do that. We need to get that collaboration. And I guess that's where my frustration is because I go into, and again, I have no problems with animal control, the shelter, other than, yes, I agree that it is not adequate, the adequate size. It doesn't have all the spacing needs. But again, to me, when I walk in there and I see 12 dogs stuck in a cage, and again, I didn't, that day I didn't go over to Second Chance, but I've been at Second Chance. And I go over to Humane Society and they don't have any dogs. There needs to be some way to work together. And that's my point is if we can't work together and if it's your shelter against her shelter against their shelter, that's not going to work. And that's why I keep saying we need, when we started this whole thing back on February 10th, I literally asked you, we need to figure a way forward. And the way forward isn't pitting the shelters against each other. It's trying to work together to become better. Each can have the special whatever niches that they're doing, but we need to work together. And I don't think that's happening.
And we need to make sure there's best practices that are being done for these animals.
Yeah, and
I know for a fact there's not.
well, we literally have asked you, and Jesse had asked last month, and I know I don't want to beat this into the ground, but we've talked about this and we still don't have any policies. And again, I know, so we're going to fix that. We need to fix that. But my thing is, if we can't work together, there's a problem. And whether that's, I don't know. I'm not saying, I've never said we're going to go back to Humane Society. I've never said we're going to switch over to Animal Second Chance. But what I've said is, and I keep saying this, is we need to figure out how to work together. Because if we're not working together, you're all working independently, and there needs to be a collaboration. And I think that's where, I guess, my frustration comes from, is because I haven't seen it. And I've been doing this, I've been part of this animal control thing since 2017. And again, I know there's personalities and stuff, but I haven't seen, I shouldn't say I haven't seen it, because I think from my conversations with Second Chance, they're more than willing to help do whatever. They've even kind of talked to us about, at one point, there was a space up there that they said we could, because I don't think your space is adequate over there. But we need to figure out a way forward, and unless, well, I guess it's going to start with the policies. But we need to figure out how to work together for a common goal here.
So in September, I signed up for a conference down in Grand Rapids. If one of you want to come with us or come with me, I extend that invitation. Just reach out to me. We'll get you the dates, times, location. Like I said, I went to that training last month, and and I had my perceived vision of things. I was wrong on some of them. I was right on some of them. But the only way we're gonna get things right is through education, and so I'll extend that invitation if we get to that point.
Share one more comment if I may. So Deputy Reed, you gave me a tour of your shelter, and you're to be commended. I mean, for what you have to work with, I think you're doing a great job there. But I agree with Commissioner Kozlowski in that, I mean, we saw a lot of those dogs, they look pretty happy. I mean, obviously they were happy to get attention. They look healthy. It was wall-to-wall dogs. There really was. And if there is an opportunity for us, we at least need to do our due diligence to see if there is another way. I think you're the right ACO for the ordinance enforcement, and you may be the right one to manage the shelter as well, but that's a lot to do. As you've said, you're always really busy, and I know you are. I believe that you are. And maybe at least we do due diligence to take shelter operations off your shoulders so you can do the enforcement piece. I know where your heart might be, because you've told us, and I understand that. But maybe there is another opportunity on the shelter side of things, not the enforcement side. I think you fit that well, with being a certified law enforcement officer, be a vet tech, so you can make those assessments on the spot. But we have to do our due diligence, we commissioners, on is that the best way for the county to operate, to have a control shelter when there's a couple of other protection shelters that could take on control shelter operations. And that's where we're at right now. We're still looking at what I call courses of action and trying to figure out and to determine what is the best way overall. Not the cheapest necessarily, but what is the best way overall for the county. And that's what our charge is, in my opinion.
As the ACO, as long as I maintain control of my live evidence, that's what's most important to me, because most of my cases are proven while that live evidence is inside my shelter.
Understand.
And that comes from educated and knowledgeable staff.
Understand.
Well, thanks for listening to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The ad hoc committee, do you want me to schedule monthly meetings every couple of weeks? I mean, I don't want this to get lost. If we need to get these policies going, I'd like to make sure that we move forward with this.
Well, and I talked to Commissioner Cisco, and I did say that at the last meeting, I think that I wanted to wait till today, figure out how we're going to move forward with this. But I do believe that we need to start meeting. We just need to figure out what's going to work, because I know you got like 90% of all the committees that you go to. So we need to figure out a best time for all of us.
All right, we'll send out something from our office with some scheduling notes.
Yeah.
Sheriff, does that work?
Okay.
So how do we start to track these statistics so we're not asking the same questions in 6 months of where the money is going and where it needs to go?
I do think that we need to make some changes, and I think, and I don't know where you are, but we had a conversation about, the donations and the proper way for the donations. we're like I feel like we're almost at the beginning here because there's so many things that we need to kind of work out, policies, the donations, is a lot of stuff to work out. And I don't know, I guess Michelle's the one to be able to answer, how do we best start tracking that stuff to be able to, and again, I think you know better than us, but how do we get that information? So as Commissioner Konashevsky is saying, we're not asking the same questions in 6 months or whatever down the road.
You know, as far as the solid goods or consumables, I don't know. We get so much of that stuff. I don't even know where we would begin to keep track of that.
Do we have a county accountant?
I can help.
I mean, that's probably questions that we need to ask.
It sounds like Edna might have some ideas, but,
It's my understanding, and again, I am not super knowledgeable on Pet Point, thank you, Pet Point. But I believe Pet Point also has inventory management as part of what it can do. So I walked into this, however many months ago with the mistaken assumption that this was kind of a program, an existing running program. And while it is, it also has become clear that this is a program that is just kind of had to put itself together, right? There was never a point in time in which the county sat down deliberately and said, this is how we are going to run our animal control program. It just has kind of had to evolve, and it's grown. And as Deputy Reed and the ordinance enforcement piece and the piece of the prosecutor's office have grown, right? So have the demands on the shelter have grown. And there has not been a deliberative process in going through and saying, this is absolutely how we are going to make a proactive decision about running our shelter. So to answer your question, Commissioner, I think part of making sure that we are getting that data is that it becomes part of a policy, right? That when an animal comes in, it's part of that intake policy that probably they were addressing, right? That is part of that intake policy. It is right in the policy that that animal must be entered within a certain time frame into our tracking system. And this certain information must be entered as part of that intake process, right? Where the dog came from. So we know whether it was dropped off by city police or whether our ordinance enforcement officer picked it up or whether it was dropped off by somebody or, if somebody brought it in, if it was an owner surrender or somebody said, hey, I found this dog running on the side of the road, here, you take it. So that we have that data and we know that, right? And then Pet Point also has the ability to put in medications for that animal. If it saw the vet, what were the costs associated with that? How much are you feeding it? Does this dog get a cup a day or does it get 2 cups a day? Does it get a little bit of wet food mixed in with the dry food? Are there special dietary restrictions that the dog has to have? I believe that Pet Point can track all of that. So then it would just be part of the policy. Then that's enforceable, right? Then we can go back and look at that. We have a dog in the shelter and we don't have any information on it, and the dog has been here for 2 days, okay? That does not follow our policy that dog must have been entered into our system. Now we have something to go back, and whether that's a responsibility of the shelter staff, or that's a responsibility of the shelter manager, or that's the responsibility of the ACO who is managing the shelter, now we have something to hold people accountable for, as opposed to just, well, we know it's best practice and we know it should be happening, but we're not really sure how it's happening or who's supposed to be doing it.
My only concern with that is when you just started rattling off all that stuff, I'm thinking to myself, that's like one person constantly.
Yep. All that stuff is already being done. We have that in each dog that comes in has a file. We have a bunch of spreadsheets that are keeping track of exactly that information. It's just not in Pet Point.
Okay.
We just use Pet Point for income out and,
So then I guess the question goes back to Commissioner Konashevsky and again, I don't know if that's necessarily or what his question was, but that information then at some point is useful to be able to track, the statistics. And then how do we track those statistics if it's not getting put into, I guess, that Pet Point?
But you must have a Microsoft Excel or something, is that what
we
you?
do. We use Excel.
Okay.
And, like I said, each animal has a
As its history, yeah. Okay.
its own file and stuff. But if you can, I mean, if you can get us exactly what statistics you want us to start tracking, if we're not already doing it, we can already, we can add that in there. Pet point is not the most shelter-friendly program.
So
Then there might, right, I was gonna say.
It's just,
I'm just gonna say, well, if it's not what,
yeah,
we need, then-
$500 one-time thing. And there are other programs out there, but they're pricey. To say the least.
So
But if they give us better data, might be worth it.
over,
Sorry, can I ask, is the issue, since she says that they have the data, but you guys want to be able to see the data easily, right? And that's kind of one of the biggest issues is.
No, I don't think we're
being able to
looking, I
see
mean,
it.
we'd like some data,
Yeah,
but I'm not saying that data has to be instantaneously. I think we just need to be able to make some decisions.
right. So to be able to see the data that they've already, that she says that they've gathered. So, but you guys need to see that because you guys aren't seeing that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a certain thing, but that is obviously a very important thing to get figured out. How to get their data to easily accessible to all of you
Yep.
and the public. Okay,
Because eventually we're making decisions based on that information.
yeah, that's extremely important. Okay.
it's monthly or whatever, but yeah.
Would it help if I came here once a month like Janelle does and do a monthly animal?
I was just gonna ask you to do just that.
Yep.
But it's obvious to all of us sitting here that the frustrations are building on both sides of this wooden table. And I feel like for the best of everybody, we're not gaining the ground. We need to know what it's gonna cost. I guess in the grand scheme of things, I would like you to help us help you. If you can come here once a month with that report from the software and say, we took in 30 dogs, 25 of them came from the city, and we had very generous donations that totaled an approximate value of $5,000, and we had to spend out of county money $3,000. Those are the things that we need to look at in order to give the good decision for the 30,000 people that the 7 of us have to represent. I really sincerely do not have a problem looking you in the eye and telling you that I think the 3 of us sitting here, including yourself and all of the people that you bring every month, we all have the same end goal in mind. We want to do what is best for these animals. And just like, going back and forth between the 3 facilities, we in this room have to stop going back and forth on this side of the table and that side of the table. So let's work together with you once a month. Let's look at these statistics. Let's see what it's costing everybody and what we can do to move forward. Whether it's asking for more money from the state because we need it, or whether it's asking the taxpayers of this county to help us build a new shelter because we need it. We have to have information that's accurate for us to be able to give our spiel to make something come together. And we have to make something come together because I agree, I was at your facility twice and I agree with John. That is no place for any animal to live for a year. So maybe we need to change our live evidence policy. If people found themselves in court, well, that's unfortunate, but their animals shouldn't have to be tangled up for a year. People foster children that don't have to live in a cell for a year. Maybe we foster these dogs. We have to, and maybe you can bring to us once a month a policy that you guys have put together, whether it be working with this ad hoc committee, if it took you guys 2 hours to put together one, maybe we do 2 or 3 a month. So we can come back here in 6 months and say, we've been doing this for a year. Here's where we started. Here's where we are. Where are we going?
That's pretty much what our goal is, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I can even try to get something together for next week's full
Just
board.
a comment from the volunteer side, we've got such a good volunteer base now, we can help do that, and make it work.
Yeah.
If it's state,
We can't do input though.
yeah, we can, we can help with that.
So I was
I'm
given
committing the volunteers to do that.
a book,
Don't tell
What's your name again, ma'am? So I can-
So I was given a book from a friend of mine a long time ago who has helped me succeed in life. And the book is called Who, Not How. Michelle can't do all this herself. You know, there's no way. So it sounds like you have a great group of volunteers. So,
Yes, Michelle's been saying that for 6 years.
right, yeah. So, you know, I think these people are more than willing to help you. If you guys sit down as a collective group and delegate, you know, so you're not burning these two ladies out and, you know, someone else is coming in once a month and, you know, scooping some food for the dog, maybe help delegate. It sounds like you've got someone that's willing to input data. You know, you have to write it down when you take these animals in somewhere. If she can read your notes and put it into the software.
Right, intake's still in right away, but
Yeah.
I mean, they can be trained.
So that's my take. That's what I want to portray to everybody here. Help us, help you. We all have the same end goal. So let's work together and get there. And when you come, maybe we meet at this group once a month. This facility or this group meets once a month, right?
We meet monthly, yeah.
Maybe you can come to us once a month and, you know, we can look at these statistics together and look at the policies that you've created that month. You know, we can look at them beforehand, you know, a couple of days and say, you know, hey, here's what we think. You know, let's change this. Let's not change anything. It looks great. And then every month we can chisel away at something.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what we did with the first intake policy and procedure, so.
Yeah.
Like, I worked with one cat for like 3 weeks. He was just so scared one come out. I have the war balloons. But he become adoptable now because I work with him, give him what we call a cat crack.
Sure.
It's just treats and he comes out along the edge. We got him out there. She moved. I cried when she told me she gave him his rabies shots.
You know, and that's what I say, like capacity for care. We do amazing things. There are miracles that happen in that 2-car garage every day. Our animals don't get worse, they get better.
Right. I agree. And we've all seen it.
Yeah,
And frankly,
And they come to you crate trained, that's just a bonus.
right. Yeah, you know, and the expense to our county would obviously increase in the event you decided to no longer take part in this situation. And we all know that. So with that, we don't want that. That's not part of our goal. But, you know, at the end of the day, we all have a job to do as well. We have to report to the people in our community, just like you guys have to come to us so we can relay that information. So somehow, you know, I think we're on to something, you know, we can show up together here once a month, look at some policies, see where we're going, and then check those off the list and move on to the next.
I think where we start is like the ad hoc subcommittee or whatever, and we go from there. But yeah, I said that, keep saying, I guess we keep hitting the same thing. Start with the policies. We need the policies. We need to do some of this other stuff to be able to get the statistics to move forward.
And
I
in all,
just want to bring up policies and procedures. We do have policies and procedures that we follow to a T and how things are done all the time. They're not written down, and a majority of animal shelters do not have written policies and procedures. So that is one step in the right direction. I mean, we have Millage Run shelter, control shelter over in Otsego. They don't have written policies and procedures. Sheboygan doesn't have written policies and procedures. It's actually pretty common in animal shelters, but we are getting better, and that's why the state's pushing it, even though it's
Well, I
not
think
required.
going back to what Eric said is that this is, it's changing. It's not the same facility that you, yeah.
And that's why MDARD has started kind of pushing the policy and procedure thing, because, and we can see the writing on the wall, it's gonna come where that's going to be a requirement. So when they do our shelter inspections every year, that they want to see our policies and procedures, because they already ask that question every year.
Those other counties don't have issues yet.
that you know of.
Believe me, if you do a little search of animal control shelter issues in the state of Michigan, Alpena County will not be the only one that comes up. And look, data helps drive the story. It drives how we think about it, and it drives the best possible outcome that we can have. And as we have gained more data, right, we have educated ourselves about our program.
And in all fairness to Deputy Reed, you know, we keep talking about data, you know, we need to tell you what it is we want from you.
Please.
Yeah, we need, I mean, in all fairness, there's a part, we need to tell you, this is what information we desire. And that's part of what the ad hoc needs to do, is to sit down and say, this is what we want you to report on monthly. And then in this forum, as an example, to do that. So,
Our data collection gets better and better every year. We have evolved,
okay.
Quite a bit. I just need to know what you want. Like, there were a few things that the sheriff had wanted not that long ago. We hurried up and added it to our intake procedure. And I mean, it's pretty simple if I know what you need.
Understand.
One comment I want to make about utilities. We do like 6 to 8 loads of laundry a day. And I know because when the septic system was backed up in the fairgrounds, that was coming to my house. I was doing about 6 loads of laundry and I'd drop off the laundry tub back around 1:30 in the morning. And then the next morning I'd pick it up, because it wasn't draining. So when you get dogs come in, like the 5, most of them were not housebroken. So they're potting every time and stuff like that and stuff. So, yeah, that's why there's a lot more expenses, because we gotta do the laundry.
Yeah, so write that stuff down if you could for us. And I don't want to sound sarcastic, I really don't. But if you write that down, that will help us. If you come to us in 6 months and say, people have donated 3 wash machines and we've worn them all out, then maybe it makes sense for us to buy you a nice big industrial one where you can do 1 load a day that weighs 50 pounds. So help us help you. Write that down. Write down how many boxes of laundry soap or gallons that you're going through.
I donated laundry soap, but
Yep.
my own power and water and gas, but it had to be done.
Sure. And if all of you folks give up on us and say those guys can pack sand, then we're gonna know the hard way that we should have bought you a wash machine a year ago. So if you can just help us with all this information, we'll help you as best as we can. We have to have a sales
It's gonna
pitch.
use the utilities, that's the thing. It's gonna use the power, it's gonna use the water, it's gonna use the gas.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, I think we probably have hit the main topics on this one.
I'm sorry, is it okay if, I don't know if there's gonna be time at the end, but I just had a brief statement I wanted to read. Is that okay as a citizen?
Yeah.
Brief.
Yeah.
How brief is it?
Yeah, there's no public comment,
Like
but
2 minutes? I
Yeah,
think it's 2 minutes. Is that okay?
related to animal control?
Yeah, it is.
All right, I'll give you, I don't want to turn this into a public comment time, but if that's something, I'll let you
Okay,
say something.
okay. Thank you.
Time do I think it's about 2 minutes? Obviously. Okay, sorry.
It always lasts longer than you think it does.
What'd you say?
It always lasts longer than you think it does.
Probably, especially when you're nervous. Okay, hold on. Please don't say the time yet. Let me get it.
It started a minute and a half ago.
Okay, so before I say my thing, I just want to say I appreciate this dialogue and I appreciate you guys talking about this stuff and the whole talking about data. You're right, it does drive everything and it's really important to get.
who are you?
Oh, sorry, I'm Kayla Grace, I'm a citizen here, and to me, honestly, it appears like you guys are trying to fix something that's not broken. I mean, yes, everything can have improvements, but most counties search for years for something that not only connects them strongly to their citizens, but also serves as a foundation for a positive publicity campaign. Alpena County has it, and it appears that you're trying to destroy it. Alpena County has one of the most respected animal control shelters, and Deputy Reed has been named the best animal control officer in the state of Michigan. Her program is one that many other counties are actually trying to duplicate. After all, the cost per dog in 2018 was $357, but the cost per dog in 2022 was all the way down to $16.25. The citizens of Alpena are behind the shelter. One way you can easily see that is the donations it receives. In 2019, donations were $10,193. By 2022, the amount was all the way up to $54,282. Instead of embracing the great service of the county animal shelter provides to its citizens and the lost, abused, maimed, tortured animals, they seek to close it down. In an email from Cindy Dawson to Mary Catherine Hannah in July 22, it appears Mary Catherine had already told her she wanted to shutter the animal control shelter. That makes Mary Catherine's press release dated March 10th, 2023, saying that no final decision had been made, seem disingenuous. To shutter the shelter based on finances is also disingenuous, as it seems the county would still be paying for all vet bills, the cost of any expansion of Huron Humane Society's facilities. So instead of putting it into our expansion, it would be, we're paying for theirs. And other expenses, while the Humane Society's only real obligation is to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to take in animals. That's it. Additionally, there's an email from John Kowalski, to Mary Catherine, where he tells her he doesn't want to be a public meeting where Michelle gets the word out to all her people to show up. He asks what we should do. First, I want to say, I don't even know Michelle Reed. I've never met her. So I'm not one of her people, but I have seen the positive impact she and the volunteers and everybody else and the dogs that get adopted and the cats that, like you said, aren't even under the purview, still are taken care of and helped, and the amazingness it's done to this community. So in my opinion, this is what you should do. You should stop with the personal bias, realize any partnership with HHS means the county is still going to be paying for it, and keep our shelter open. Continue to use the best resource this county has, which is Deputy Reed. And she is trained, she's dedicated, and diligent, and she continues to go, for more training. And I think it's great that what you've asked her to do, and I think that's an amazing idea for her to come every month, whatever, and bring these statistics and get all the things that you guys want to know. Because you're right, at the end of the day, you've been elected and you're here for the people. And what's best for the county, what's best for these animals, all of that. So I say keep our unbroken animal control shelter open. Hopefully we can expand it and get more resources, okay, sorry, that I didn't time that, but that's.
Okay.
That's okay.
I'm going to say one thing and then we're going to be done with this so we can end this. So I'm not going to say again, this is a year ago. We've had discussions. The day that on February 10th, and I keep going back to this, when I walked into that meeting, I literally said to you that when I say we, I mean the Board of Commissioners have not made any decisions. We, as the Board of Commissioners, make those decisions. And the point about trying to do something, because I've seen that stuff, I'm getting people sending me emails and texts, but I don't care. You can go through every single one of my emails. So if I went through my emails, which I did last night at 12:30 to double check to where this was, the email that Mary Catherine had talked about discussed a meeting. And again, it goes back to the Public Open Meetings Act. One of the things, because if you know, this committee is made up of 3 people. So if 2 of us, and that was my point, if 2 of us met, and this is all, and again, I go back to that meeting in February 10th. This has been a discussion where we need to find the facts. And I think we pretty much laid out the facts today where we need to go. Never once have I said we're shutting down the facility. Never once have I heard any of the other commissioners say we're shutting down. They may have said it or thought it, but I have never heard that. So I guess to kind of Travis, Commissioner Konashevsky's point, that we need to work together. This information where, information is being put out there. I know the FOIA stuff was all done. Again, I don't have any problem with anyone looking at my emails. That email specifically was, we need information, and to get 3 of us or 2 of us would be an open meeting. And I don't want to, we're not going to get that. When you have more public dialogue, you're not really getting the facts. And again, our meeting on April or February 10th wasn't an open meeting, but we got information. So that was my intent with that email to Mary Catherine was, we need more information. And by the way, we never had a meeting. So there was never a meeting. I went through my phone to find out, did we ever have a meeting? And we never had a meeting. The next meeting was our actual court and public safety meeting. So that's all I want to say about that. And again, when we get into this back and forth, we're not really getting anywhere. So, I know there's a lot of public Facebook stuff, and I will never get involved in the Facebook drama stuff. I have had a lot of people send stuff to me, but I'm going to overlook it and move on. We're not getting anywhere if we continue to, attack Mary Catherine, attack me.
But I don't think I was attacking.
No, I'm not saying you. I'm not saying you. I'm saying people, it's not helping the situation. What we need is Commissioner Konashevsky said, we need the facts, we need to be able to move forward, and that's what we want to do. Since the beginning, since February 10th, and I keep, I've said it enough to know that February 10th was the day that we met. Never, my intent that day was never to walk into a meeting and say, we're shutting down animal control.
That's great.
My intent was to find out information that we needed, as I've said tonight, and we can go back and look at the minutes.
I appreciate, and like I said, that's one thing I appreciate that you have said tonight. It's about collecting the information.
Well, collecting the data, and you've been able to work together and
Exactly.
figure out the issues.
Yeah.
So I think we pretty much beat this one into the ground, and I want to, I guess, move on.
Sounds good. And I think that's really cool how I think every side of this, their side, your side, however you want to divide it, all kind of seem to want to work together. But like you said, it's figuring out how. And that's the hard work. That's where you guys are right now. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
You've already started. You gave us 2 statistics here.
Now I'm going to fact check them, but.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. And I can provide you the documentation for that if you want later. I'll be very happy to.
Thank you for your time.
All right, so much for this quick meeting.
I thought you were being a little optimistic.
I know. Well, when we breezed through the first couple items. All right, so I'm hoping the next few items that we have to discuss, if I can find my thing here. Where did it go? Here we go.
The 9-page contract.
Oh, geez, I owe totally.
Well, if the contract, yes.
Well, the only good news is that we're still at a point where we don't need a decision tomorrow.
Correct. And mostly that was my entire intention of just putting it on your radar screen and getting your authority to go ahead and open up discussions with the attorneys in terms of a contract renewal. Yes, this contract isn't imminent. It's not going to expire tomorrow. It's not a rush. But one of the things is that we have had a number of swaps in and out. And so I really do want to do a new contract because we had a couple of people drop off of this contract and people add on, no changes in the dollar amounts for the total contract.
I thought the one that you sent us, was that a changed one?
No.
I saw Denise Burke's name on it.
Yeah. I
Yep.
do, yeah.
So this is the most recent contract that has the new attorney Denise Burke listed on it. She was added when.
Katie Count.
Thank you. Katie Conklin asked to be removed from that contract. Again, no changes in dollar figures. It's the same dollar amount. We just swapped in one attorney for another, but I just wanted to make you guys aware. And just so that you know, as we head into negotiations with the folks who are as part of this contract, there is discussion at the state level and there is legislation that is wending its way through the Michigan legislature that would move some of the juvenile cases that are handled through this contract to the MIDC office, to the Michigan Public Defender's Office that we contract with. And so it would then be covered under the MIDC contract. But until we see exactly what that language is and which cases will get moved, it will make it a little bit hard for this contract. But we'll get through it as best as we can. I don't anticipate that legislation will be through by the end of the year.
Okay.
Because I know it says in the agenda to review the attorney contract that expires. So your intent today, Mary Catherine, is that we would just
present.
note that we have this contract and further action.
Well, and to authorize me to go ahead and start talking to the attorneys if they're interested in renewals and under what conditions.
Need a motion for that then? Okay. I would move that would allow our county administrator to begin contract negotiations through the family court attorney contract effective today.
Okay, we got a motion,
I'll support.
support. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. So all those in favor, or, well, it's just no money. So all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approved, motion's approved. And then the next one is the DHD number 4, Pied Piper MOU, which is, we have an action item to, I guess, the committee would recommend approval of the memorandum of understanding between the AMA ESD Pied Piper School and the DHD number 4 for the use of the facility in the event of a school emergency, and authorize the chairman of the board and/or the county administrator to sign all pertaining documents as presented.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Kim, isn't this already in their emergency management procedures? Isn't this arrangement already established? It looks familiar from my days when I was in your boots. So, I mean, we could certainly act on it, but I thought that this agreement was already in place.
Well, there was an agreement, so it's a renewal.
Okay.
So it's making sure that we have a current
This was what, was this like a 3 or 4 year thing? And then, so,
Okay.
and when is this,
time to renew.
when is this, I saw something, I thought
Yep, hold on. It's in the MOU. I'm sorry, I didn't note it particularly separately. The last agreement was signed in 2018.
Okay.
5 years. So, yep.
ending this year?
So it ends this year.
Okay.
Okay, so I thought it might be a renewal because that looked familiar.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's really, I mean, it's just to be able to authorize them to use the building in case of an emergency.
Right, that's
So,
correct. If something happens in the Pied Piper School building and they need to evacuate, they can take the students and the staff over just down the street to DHD number 4.
Yep, so we have, are you willing to,
Make a motion?
Yeah.
I sure am.
okay.
Yeah.
So we have
I
a,
would move that we approve the agreement between AMA and ESD to use the facility, authorize the chairman and or the county administrator to sign all the documents as presented.
okay.
And I'll support.
So this is any discussion? If not, then ask to, oh, well, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. One passed. Did I say aye?
I don't think so.
Aye.
You can abstain, but that's okay.
No, I'm just saying, did I say aye? I don't know if I said aye. I do support it, so. And then we have the ambulance funding monthly reports, and I think you and I were talking before the meeting. These aren't really any, unless, and
Chief
I
Edmonds
hate,
is here.
I know, I hate to have you sit all the way through this to not get something, but come up and tell us something.
The only thing I was just going to say is that Chief Edmonds and we have started a conversation in regards to the contract for services and also some of the provisions that are in the ambulance fund policy right now in regards to reimbursement. The contract language and the language that's in the fund don't match up exactly. And so we had to have a discussion around getting the language sort of ironed out and more clear about what is reimbursable from the ambulance fund. So I don't know, Chief Edmonds, if you had any other comments.
You can't sit all the way through this meeting and not say something, right?
I'll say something. I'll be good about it. So really quick, yes, we're entering into just basically cleaning up some of the language so we have a good interpretation of what the intent of the contract is. So we're working on that ahead of time. Other than that, I really don't have much. We're in the process of decommissioning one ambulance that you guys will get back and putting the other one back in service. Paperwork's been filed with the state. It's just a matter of them doing an inspection. Other than that, it's business as usual for us. So
Okay.
getting into summer months.
And you guys have seen the reports. Do you have any questions or comments on the ambulance report? Actually, I don't want
It all looked
Okay,
fine. They all looked good.
all right. So we just need to, and I don't know if we want to, I appreciate you for sticking it out.
No problem. I'm here in case you have any questions.
I don't think we have any questions for you today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I would make a motion that we receive and file the monthly ambulance reports that have been provided as presented.
Okay,
I will support.
so we have a motion and support. Questions? If not, I would, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we move on. Medical examiner's report, I think the next couple were, unless you guys really have questions, but I looked through the medical examiner's report and both the Veterans Affairs. I don't know if you want to take them individually or review them. How do you want to do this? Do either one of you have questions on?
I don't, I've read them all and I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I don't either.
So how about we make life a little bit easier and we just, if someone would be willing to make a motion to receive and file both the remaining medical examiners and Veterans Affairs reports.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and support.
Yep.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, I think we move through them and then other discussion. Nothing?
Nothing,
Really? Okay,
not today.
good.
I mean, we have nothing from the juvenile justice, nothing's changed there yet with, so our ad hoc committee hasn't met because we have no changes in the circumstances.
Okay. If we have nothing else to discuss, I guess we're at the end of the meeting.
Oh, man.
So, anybody be willing to make a motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion.
A motion
I will
to,
support it.
and support to adjourn. Any discussion? If not, I would ask that all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed? Okay.
You're
Done.
adjourned.